Oh, yeah, it did go to my Twitter.
Nice. We get a whole new audience chiming in, hopefully.
We'll see.
Yeah. Luke's Twitter followers.
All 200 of them, or however many it is. There we go.
Uh-oh. Aaron's fired up.
Oh, there we go. All right. Yep. Aaron already chiming in. Well, on that note, welcome in everybody here to PrimeTime Sports. Before I can even share the page, we got people commenting. Look at that. We don't even need to publicize anymore. We're already ready to go. But Eric is he's a guest on his own show today.
That's right. That's right. I kind of like it. It's like you had to do all the heavy lifting, get the stream set up, and get all the graphics ready to go, and then you sent me a link to join my own show. Our show, but either way, I kind of like it.
You're basically like the Chris Russo. You're just going to check in after everyone else does all the work to rail on people today. That's kind of
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. I think it's like that. So.
Anyway, welcome into Primetime Sports. We got Luke Stanzik and Eric Woolwhite with you here today as the normal tag team for Primetime Sports. Huge day in a lot of not good ways for Chicago sports. We will talk a lot about the Blackhawks. The report of the sexual assault allegations came down today, so we're going to talk about Stan Bowman stepping down from his post as general manager of the Blackhawks. And I also believe he had a position with USA Hockey. Is that right? I saw you step down from that too.
Yeah, he was the general manager for USA Hockey, so putting, the one who would be putting the team together for the 2022 Olympics. So he is no longer in that role, and rightfully so.
So we will talk about that first and foremost, and a couple of other Blackhawks related news before we get to the Bears. Bears are down in the standings. So we'll talk a little bit about the debacle that was in Tampa Bay. And then also, after we talk some Bears, the Bulls have been great. So we don't want to do all bad news. We'll talk about the Bulls and the way they've started the year. And also, we'll end the show with Ozzie Ball potentially returning. Ozzie Guillen interview with the Padres. So we'll give our quick thoughts on that before we jet out of here. We always like to keep this to an hour, but I'm sure this will go well over an hour today. There's a lot to talk about, and it always does. So, Eric, I'm going to just turn the floor to you right now on your own show.
Sure.
I always like to say you're the resident hockey guy, but this story obviously stretches well beyond the realms of sports and hockey. So we both are going to have a lot of thoughts on this one, and we already got comments flying in about this, but what do you make of this whole thing with the Blackhawks and today's report on the allegations and all this?
Well, so when the allegations first surfaced, when they became publicly known, I had a really bad taste in my mouth in terms of, what it really meant for this organization. The organization that won 3 Stanley Cups in a 6-year period. They revitalized hockey in the city of Chicago, and specifically that 2010 team that won that first of the 3 cups. That's the team that's in question here with the sexual assault charge. Well, not charge because he was never charged, but the alleged sexual assault against John Doe 1 by the video coordinator Brad Aldrich. It just, as that report comes, and I haven't read the full 137 pages. I don't know if I will. I have read some of the excerpts, though, a lot of the stuff that's been shared on Twitter, some of the stuff that's been covered on Sports Talk Radio. And you don't even have to dive that far just to understand how awful this story is and how awful this makes the Blackhawks organization look. And again, I said it when the allegations first came out, and the the Hawks, were trying to kind of like hide from it. And then when the 2 lawsuits were brought against the Blackhawks, they're trying to get them dismissed. I don't know what Stan Bowman thought would have come of the investigation. His initial comments was, we'll let the investigation, the process play out before we comment and things like that. He had to know this was all going to come out and that he was in the room. I guarantee he was, and so, he had to know that. He had to know where this investigation was going to go. He had to know that he was going to be implicated in terms of being in the room. And he must have been banking on the fact that he was new in his job and John McDonough was the ultimate power broker in this scenario that had the final call. But that doesn't absolve him of blame. His, attempt at an apology and passing the buck, the statement that he released was just god awful. And it just shines a horrible light on this whole organization. It's just, where, who knew, it's like, who knew what and when, right? Did it stop at McDonough? Did it go to the ownership group? Did it go to Rocky Wirtz? Did it go to Danny Wirtz or any of the Wirtz boys? Anyone in that ownership circle, were they aware of this? I have to believe they were. I also have to believe that some of the Blackhawks top players from the 2010 era knew about these allegations, and some of them were even involved in, what some of the claims by John Doe 1 is that following year, he was kind of being ridiculed by his teammates about where's his boyfriend, and that, is allegedly being Brad Aldrich. So it's a horrible, horrible look for the organization. Not even to speak of Joel Quenneville and giving high praise for Aldrich, and then Aldrich winding up to be able to get employment in roles after his time with the Hawks, even though everyone had heard what had gone on
with younger people too. That doesn't make it better or worse, but like with a younger group of people, he was able to build relationships with.
Exactly. So they enabled this pedophile, whatever you want to call him, to continue to do what he had been doing. And so the story is so bad on so many different levels. So I kind of dive into Aaron's question here, or any Hawk fans for that matter. How can you continue to support the organization? No, they covered it up. And can you root for players, Kane and Tate specifically, that knew about it and said nothing? If this was the Bruins, they would never see another penny from me. Also, what do you think the appropriate punishment should be for Q and Shovel Day Off? Bettman has said he is meeting with them before making any decisions out of respect for them. Well, they didn't seem to have much respect for John Doe 1 or John Doe 2. So I don't know why Joe Quenneville and Kevin Shovel Day Off have to get this level of respect from Gary Bettman. As a matter of fact, and I don't know if Bettman told the Panthers to hold off, but Quenneville should be out of a job right now. Shovel Day Off should be out of a job right now. They shouldn't have to wait for Gary Bettman to have a powwow with them, because the result of that powwow is both of those guys are going to be out of their job. Those organizations that employ them now should be proactive now in saying, not even waiting. You can have your meeting with Bettman, but it's going to be as a former employee, of our teams. That's what should be happening here. So, the appropriate punishment should be they lose their job, Aaron. There should be no, if Bettman wants to meet with them, that's fine. But what is Bettman meeting with them for? Did the Block and Jenner already interview those subjects, which I think they did. They interviewed Shovel Day Off and Quenneville. And so they have everything they need to know right there. I don't know why Bettman now has to assert himself into this investigation. He should be fired immediately. And regarding the players, Yeah, right. What about the players? Now, are you referring to like Tays and Kane? I think you might have saw my tweet here earlier, Aaron, where I guarantee you Tays and Kane knew about this stuff. And
They're leaders of the team.
What's that?
They're leaders of the team.
Yeah.
Like
the leaders of the team, right? Especially the captain, my captain, how they all refer to him as that. Everyone on that team, as far as I'm concerned, is implicated. And to Aaron's question, how can you support the organization? I mean, it's tough, Aaron. I try and separate the players who weren't involved with that incident, the Kirby Docks, the Alex DeBrincats. Jeremy Colleton wasn't involved back then, even though he's probably not long for the world, although he probably got a reprieve because, Bowman's not around and they have an interim GM. But, it's all of those players from the 2010 team, all of those big names, and Tays and Kane specifically, and Brent Seabrook and Duncan Keith, and whoever you want to go back to, all those players from back then, Dave Boland, who knows what players, who were the players who were saying stuff to John Doe 1, the kind of ridiculing him and things like that, and mocking him. We'll probably never know who they were, but suffice to say, where were the leaders to step up and say that's not acceptable? Or did they? Who knows? But they knew. And what frustrates me is Tays said over the summer he didn't know anything about it. He was just hearing about it. And I think Kane said something to the same effect. And they're lying just as much as Joe Quenneville was lying when he said over the summer that he didn't know anything about it. So they all wanted to kind of avoid getting caught up in this, but now it looks even worse, So it's like, should they have come up and fessed up over the summer when they were asked the question? Or are they pulling the advice of my counsel? I won't implicate myself. Whatever it is, they're cowards. And yes, Aaron, I look at that team completely differently. And, so I don't think I could support them. So this is Aaron talking about the Bruins because he's a big Bruins fan. I don't think I could support them again until every single person who knew or possibly knew is gone. That includes ownership. You can't blame Doc, DeBrincat, et cetera, but they are the ones who are going to suffer now. That's absolutely right, and the problem is the rich and the powerful are the one that are going to skate free. They always do. You can reference Patriots owner Robert Kraft skating free on the scandal from a couple of years ago or at the Super Bowl or whatever, and that's nothing compared to what this is. You had to believe the Wirtz ownership knew about it, and yet they continue to own the team. A $2 million fine versus the value of the Blackhawks is a pittance. They could have the NHL could have sent a stronger message and really hurt the Blackhawks pocketbook because they're making money hand over fist no matter how much they say they don't. That's a lie. So everything about it is awful, and it makes you question everything that you saw. Like I have the DVDs for all three of their championship seasons, Luke. I can't go back and look at any of those anymore, especially the 2010 one.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's the thing that kills me is I love hockey. And for as long as I've been a Blackhawk fan, waiting for the chance for the Hawks to win a Stanley Cup, and then they win 3, and the exciting players that were on the team, and the rise, from the late 2008, 2009 to 2010, and then 3 cups in 6 years, and just being a force and all of that. That was the heyday of hockey, and yet it's all tarnished by everything that this organization has done. And I brought this up in my tweet earlier, they continue to I don't know what the right word is for it, Luke, but they continue to use the Indian head logo when every organization except the Braves are coming to their senses and saying, you know what? probably time for us to change the logo. Instead of using this Indian head logo, now they're co-opting with some tribal groups and things like that to say that they support them, and then they put advertising and awareness in the United Center. It's just a front so that they can continue to sell the Indian head jerseys, and it's just it just keeps adding to the fun. And I know the Indian head logo versus what this issue is are two different things, and the sexual assault is a lot more serious than that. But let's not also just dismiss how there are groups who feel that they're impacted by the Blackhawks, just continuing to use the Indian head logo. So there's so much that's going on with the Hawks right now. It's just awful. Not to mention their play on the ice, but that's for another day. What today and for the next several days or weeks, what I don't know what's going to happen with this team. Aaron says, but what it shows, Eric, is an organization who can't or won't make the right decisions over and over. Yeah. I mean, they thought this thing would go away. They, in Quenneville and McDonough didn't want to interrupt the, because I guess the meeting was over the Western Conference Finals, and they didn't want to have any distractions, so they just dismissed it.
I believe the quote from the report was Quenneville thought it would hurt team chemistry.
Yeah.
So what's your, and I don't know if it's I'll start to chime in here. I don't know how to, I agree with every word that came out of your mouth. I'll say that. But that was, to me, two things made my skin crawl more than anything in this whole story. Number one, beyond the actual act of what occurred, and of course our thoughts and prayers are with John Doe 1, John Doe 2, and whoever else it is that Aldridge did this to.
Right.
Because there are probably several people that have not come forward that this happened to, maybe even in the Blackhawk locker room that we don't even know about. So our thoughts and prayers are obviously with them first and foremost. But so beyond that, the two things today that made my skin crawl more than anything that I read was, one, in the midst of all this, and they had this meeting, Joel Quenneville was more concerned about team chemistry than doing what's right and taking this to authorities, who needs to, the people who need to be notified when stuff like this comes about, because this isn't some like brushing on it or up type of thing. This is really serious stuff that he was accused of. And you and I are both, you're in the job now, and I was in the job where we were mandated reporters. So and that's something that if you are in that type of role and have that type of power, you take that seriously. That's something very important. And
right.
For him to be more concerned with team chemistry, as opposed to doing what's right in this situation, is just, that's sickening. That is, and again, I'm not a big Blackhawks fan. You know that. I follow them pretty casually. I've completely lost all respect for Joe Quenneville I ever had. And I always thought he was one of the best coaches in Chicago, especially when he was here, probably all time.
Well, he was.
Yeah.
He was. The problem is the guy doesn't have any morals. It all goes back to this hockey culture that is very toxic.
So he was afraid it was going to ruin chemistry. So it was an important part of your chemistry to ridicule this guy, whoever John Doe is, for being subjected to this. Was that part of your chemistry?
Yeah.
It's just it's absolutely mind blowing that he would prioritize that over doing what's right in this situation. And the second thing that made my skin crawl was, you alluded to it earlier, but Bowman basically, it's well, I'm sorry, but this guy's fault. I sent it upstairs. I did what I was supposed to do. And it's just, is this guy's, is his ego that big? He thought he thought that this report, like you said, when it came out over the summer, he thought that he was he had to think he was going to come off scot-free. for him to be like, oh, we'll wait to see what the investigation.
Yeah, or not scot-free, but just he truly believed, because McDonough was the number one in that situation, that all the responsibility and blame should fall on his shoulders.
Yeah,
and you're right. It does take quite the ego to think that.
Yeah, and so did he think like people were going to cover him up? I don't know what, like, or not testify that he was at this meeting. Like, I don't know what was going through that guy's mind, but for him to come out and say today that he got, I did it, I passed it upstairs and I thought it was going to be taken care of by McDonough and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, you're just everybody who was in this meeting is as culpable as everybody else. Everyone in the locker room is as culpable as everybody else. Everybody who knew about this happening is as culpable as anybody else who was involved. It doesn't matter where you are on the superior chain.
Right.
It was all enabled. It was all enabled by everybody.
Go ahead and put Aaron's recent comment up there. Yeah.
I was just about to say, this is the third thing that made my skin crawl.
Yes.
What gives him to right to resign? Like we really, that had to make, if this happened with like the Bears or one of my favorite teams, if letting this guy decide, oh, okay, I'm going to step down. Like, no, sorry for showing, your ass got fired. Like, that's what happened. You got fired because you were an idiot and you covered this up.
Yeah, it should never have been offered up to him to resign over being fired. Like, maybe that's how they positioned it. They should have just fired him. If you're really taking these allegations seriously and the results of the investigation seriously, he should have been fired too. You fired the assistant. Why not fire Bowman? Yeah.
We're being compared to CNN and Fox News here. I hope that's the only time that ever happens on this show. But there have been a lot of coaches and managers in this town that have been fired, treated like crap on the way out for a lot, for just stuff on the field, right, and not stuff like this. And that's completely wrong. I know it's a completely different organization. I think back to when Tom Thibodeau was fired by the Bulls, and the Bulls basically publicly defamed his character on the way out, and Reinsdorf wrote a letter basically saying he was a jerk and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's so for the Blackhawks to just be like, oh, okay, we'll make sure you don't take a huge PR hit on the way out here. Like, that just makes me want to throw up. Like, that's
why? Why? I mean, cut the cord, distance yourself from him. Yes, he was the GM that presided over 3 Stanley Cups. He was not responsible for the first Stanley Cup. All of that work and hard work was done by Dale Talon. But he was the GM in 2010 when the incident happened. So whatever you feel he did to help the organization be successful, all of this trumps that. And he should have been fired on the spot. And as a matter of fact, they didn't need an investigation to know who needed to go. It's like they did the investigation, and I give them credit, and about the only credit, for making it public and making some moves into some decisions, and then the league responding, even though it's not nearly what it should be. But they knew who was involved, they knew who was around, and they could have easily gotten rid of Bowman well before this investigation. Instead, they let him retain his job, and then he made personnel decisions on this team with the ownership not knowing, I shouldn't say not knowing, full well knowing that he was going to be implicated in this investigation. So the ownership group can't say, oh, we had to wait for the investigation. We didn't know how far this was and who was in the room. That's bull. That's bull. So they let Bowman retain his job. They let Bowman make personnel decisions, signing free agents, making trades, and then now he's not around anymore. So it's like, that just goes back to this organization just thinking it's over and above everything that's right. And to answer your question, Aaron, I'm not supporting this team until Taves and Kane are gone. They have to be gone. and even the interim GM, whether he gets another job in the league or not, his job should be to try and find takers for the Blackhawks players, including others, but Taves and Kane specifically. Time for them to go away. Time for this organization. And Aaron said this like several weeks back: burn it down, and start over. Now the problem is the ownership group is not going to be ejected from this equation. And so no matter if you bring in a whole slew of front office personnel and a whole new coaching regime and all new players, that ownership group is still the one that oversaw what happened in 2010 and how they poorly handled this issue from the get-go and how they poorly handled the results of this investigation. They're still going to be around. So, I mean, I don't know if I can not be a hockey fan of the Blackhawks forever, Aaron, but they're not going away. The ownership group isn't going away, but I cannot support Jonathan Toews and Patrick Kane, anymore and watching them. And they've kind of made it easy not to watch anyways, but thank God the Bulls are playing good.
So, but here's my question, and I agree with what Aaron's saying here. I really agree with this comment. If the NHL had any sort of stones to them, hit them where it really hurts. Make it hurt on the ice. It's not really much further to go from where they are down.
Right.
But find them draft picks.
I don't think they have any draft picks. They traded them all away for Seth Jones. So, but no, I get Aaron's point. You're right. It should have been more than just the two. The fine should have been higher. Draft picks should have been higher. You can't rescind the Stanley Cups they won or anything like that. Yeah, so that's ridiculous. Yeah. So that's a non-starter. But yeah, you make it hurt. You make the organization feel the pain. And if the NHL had any brass, and they don't, especially Gary Bettman, look at what the NFL and the NBA could have easily done.
Yes.
They've ejected owners
from
their ownership group and forced them to sell because they're a detriment to the league.
Yes.
You're not seeing that from the NHL.
I was about to mention, my question to your point and Aaron's point of the ownership isn't changing. My question is why? Like, why is it hard and fast that they're not going to change? Because you saw it in the NBA. I remember this was literally one of the first things Adam Silver did, and it was 2013 or 20, whatever his first year was. One of the first things Adam Silver did was the news came down about the Donald Sterling tapes.
Yep.
And, I mean, it was swift. That they forced him to sell that team faster than you could listen to the end of that tape. Yep. And he did not wait. It just came, the gauntlet came freaking down on him right away.
Yeah.
And, as a commissioner of a league, you do have that type of power. So,
yes.
So why can't ownership change? Like, Gary Bettman should sit there and look at himself in the mirror and ask himself, why can't I change this?
Well, I'll tell you one other reason why. It's not just Gary Bettman. It's all the other NHL owners. If all of the other NHL owners were up in arms about this and cared about what happened, they'd be on Bettman's phone and doorstep right now demanding that the Hawks the Wirtzes be forced to sell the Blackhawks.
I hope so.
But they're not.
Yeah.
They're probably, they're probably just thinking, oh, this will blow over, and the Wirtz have always been great for hockey and this and that. Oh, have they? They always haven't. It wasn't until Rocky took over that the Wirtzes gave a damn about the franchise. But obviously this trumps everything. And if the other owners wanted the NHL and Gary Bettman to force the Hawks to sell, they could do it. They're just not doing it, and it's just the rich boys club, not taking a stand for what's right. And it's a shame.
Yeah. You hope that maybe some of today's report makes that happen, or at least makes some people loud. The NFL may have something brewing too with some of this stuff. I don't know if you've been following the whole thing with the the WFT investigation and the emails and all that. But there's some stuff there that I think, something's going to happen at some point. The SHI team hit the fan.
The only people implicated in that were John Gruden, Bruce Allen?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. It's Snyder's organization, and
I mean, the whole thing, the bottom line is all of this is this toxic locker room culture, toxic masculinity culture that still percolates in sports and in locker rooms everywhere. And a lot of people, and I don't want to get political with this stuff, but a lot of people want to talk about like wokeness and things like that with this stuff, like, and cancel culture, like maybe all that, maybe there's some merit to like those complaints, but the bottom line is this type of stuff is not okay. Like
it's not.
No matter what your opinion is on people's punishments, like the actual stuff happening is not okay. And hopefully that as, the next generation of athlete comes up, this stuff kind of goes away. I think it's going to take a long time for that to happen. But hopefully, the generation of athletes now is being raised to be taught that it's not okay and it goes away. But for now, it's obviously a huge, huge problem. And these people need to be called out for it. Like, that's just the bottom line. Like, you have to be called out for it. And it would be a lot better if these people, once they get caught or whatever the case is, just come and just confess it. Like, you obviously knew about what happened. If you're Caves, if you're Caves, if you're Kane, if you're Taves, if you're Quenville, all these people, like if they just come out and made a statement and said, hey, look, I really effed up. I did a terrible thing. I covered this up. I'm not proud of it. I will comply with whatever the NHL wants to do, fines, penalties, whatever the case may be. Does that excuse the act? No. But at least I don't understand the hesitation to do that, because that's the positive PR. If you came out and did that, it's not passing the buck to the guy up top, or we're gonna wait and let the process play out. No, just own up to it. Like, we're not gonna get past this type of stuff until you own up to it, and then we can move on and change it. Then we can figure out what we did wrong. But until people own up to it, we can't do that.
Yeah. So, and we talked about Quenville, excuse me, and his role in this. You cannot overlook how filthy John McDonough looks in this now. And, everything is about protecting the brand, protecting the image. I didn't like him when he was the top guy there. There are things that he did that was all about steering the image and image over everything else, and not, he put walls around the organization, and he was a tyrant from all accounts. So he was just a horrible individual in this part, and you can't let it go unsaid that he ultimately is the one who just kind of let this be, and everyone followed that. But there are a lot of other people who were involved and were just as guilty. But McDonough definitely takes the cake, and I never liked him as they got more success. He just kept putting up more walls and walls and walls, and I don't like that. I don't like when NFL teams have this wall of secrecy and stuff like that. It's like, what are you hiding? It's a freaking sport, So
Unfortunately, what we found out from this is there could be things that are being hidden.
Yeah.
That's
what else? What else? It's like, and you don't know. It's like there could be other things that come up. You just don't know. And the problem is people don't take these allegations seriously, or they're dismissed. They're both adults, so it was consensual. You just automatically assume it's consensual just because they were both adults, but it wasn't for the 16-year-old. So it's like, no, it can be wrong regardless of the age. An assault is an assault, and there's no two ways around it. It's just, it's horrible. I'm not going to support this team, for a long time. They're not going to trade Tays. They're not going to trade Kane. But I don't know how they don't do it, Luke. They're like, are there blind Blackhawk fans that will just continue to show up because it's a party in the madhouse at Madison. It's like, will they, they don't care about this stuff. They just want to go and have a good time and hear Chelsea Dagger and all that crap. I mean, this is the time. Again, Aaron said it best. Burn it down. Burn it down. Yeah. Spot on, right? Spot on. Not go away unless those involved are held accountable for their actions through fines or serving time in jail. Yeah. The problem is,
and in this case, fines, hurting them on the ice is going to hurt a lot more than fines. Like we talked about that. Like draft picks, I don't know. You probably know the cap rules in it. Maybe a stricter salary cap for them for a couple of years. I don't know, like just something other than $2 million to the Blackhawks is like you walking down the street and finding a penny. Like so that doesn't do anything. So, but no, 100%. Like this will continue to be enabled unless they're held accountable in ways greater than they're currently being held accountable.
Yeah, and I know it's not just hockey, but hockey is probably up there as far as leagues with horrible cultures. As much as they try and show, hey, no, we're inclusive and this and that, they're not. It's just ingrained, and that's at the players level too.
Yeah, I have hope in other sports. I mean, again, I'm not only do I not know hockey, I never played it. I never was around the sport of hockey. I've been around other sports, never really been around the sport of hockey. I have some hope that, like in baseball, the sport I'm around more than anything, that this type of culture is changing. I just see the way, like as a coach, I see the way my players interacted with each other this year compared to like how players interacted when I was their age. And I thought it was a lot healthier and better. Like, of course, there's teasing and all that. You're on a team, but like and of course, I'm not naive to think maybe they're doing everything behind my back. But by and large, I thought it was a lot healthier atmosphere in terms of the toxic stuff.
Yeah.
So I have hope that is going to change. And I kind of alluded to that earlier. I hope that their generation of athlete realizes that this stuff is wrong more than the prior one did, and that this will change. But it's going to take time, and it's going to take, we have alluded to, several people have alluded to in their comments, it's going to take people being held accountable for that also to change.
Right. No, it will. And I go back to something as simple as you can ban fighting in hockey. They never will, because you still have these prehistoric general managers and owners who feel, that's the draw. It's like hockey fights. I'm long over those. When I was first a hockey fan and seeing a fight, it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And I've been at games at the old Chicago Stadium when Al Secord would drop the gloves and go after Dino Ciccarelli, and the stadium would go nuts. And, you felt like it was gladiators or something like that. My dad always used to say, I went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. Right. That's the oldest joke in the book, or one of them, but I've heard that one too.
I also remember it was a while ago. It was like an HBO documentary special type thing of a series between the Capitals and the Penguins from like the late 2000s. And there was a scene. I remember actually my pitching coach in college made us watch like episodes of this just to show like competitive spirit. I'm not sure what his point was. I didn't really understand a lot of things he did. But anyway, there was a scene in this documentary, and these two guys on either or both teams are just on the ice, and the crowd's going nuts, and they just grab each other like, hey, you want to fight? And the other guy's like, sure. And they just start punching each other. It was like the fakest thing in the world. I'm like, wait a second, is that how fights start in hockey? They just walk up and
a lot start that way.
Hey, you want to punch
because
me?
They know, first of all, the coaches, it's not an accident that those two players are on the ice at that time. The coaches are wanting those things to happen, and then the players are just willing and able to comply.
It's almost like in baseball when the manager is just trying to get ejected on purpose, like just to like fire everybody up. Like that's kind of like what the hockey fight is. Like, let's just go fire everybody up.
Right. Yeah. It's like, all right, I'm gonna send out my goon And even though we're down 3-0 here in the first period and we've looked awful, if I send out my goon, he gets in a fight, it'll rally the troops and maybe we can come back. That's hockey culture.
Can we get one of those guys on the Bears?
Well,
maybe that's what Bilal Nichols was trying to do in the second half of that Bear game.
Right, or Mario Edwards or whatever. But it's just the pace of change in the NHL is like a glacier. It really isn't. They can tout what they do and they're inclusive and they're changing and this and that. And there are players who are really involved in trying to change the game and change the culture. But you're trying to undo years of toxic culture, and people in power still support those things, even though they won't outwardly say it. Behind the scenes, they're like, wink, wink, that it's just, yeah. So I cannot support the Blackhawks in this current. I know the Wirtzes aren't going anywhere. That's the sad thing. If the NHL would put their foot down, force them to sell, that would be the greatest thing, because fans, got a chance to experience hockey. And I've been a hockey fan since, I want to say it's like 78. 77 is when I first started watching hockey, going to Blackhawk games. So I've seen the ups and downs. I saw some great years in the 80s, the Dennis Savard teams. They went to the Stanley Cup, faced the Penguins, and then they got quickly vanquished. But when hockey is right and when hockey is good in any town, but in Chicago, it was outstanding. And now I know we're dragging out of this. Some of the ambassadors of the Blackhawks are bad people. Bobby Hull is a noted wife beater, misogynist, all of this stuff. And he is an ambassador for the Blackhawks. It's just, I cannot, let's see what they do with him, though. But he's noted for this. And he sits up there in the press box and he waves and it's like, all right, well, he's the Golden Jet, and because he was good, we'll just let him be an ambassador and let him ride out the sunset. It's like, no, it's like you cannot take your organization seriously if you continue to employ him as an ambassador.
Well, I mean, you see stuff like this in sports a lot. Like, I remember a couple of years ago, the San Francisco Giants cut all their ties with Aubrey Huff because of the stuff he was saying on Twitter, and they didn't invite him back in their He had a World Series reunion for 10-year anniversary for, I think it was the 2010 team won World Series. They told him he's not allowed because of the stuff, the stuff he said. I don't want to get too political with this here, but basically what he said was over the line, and they didn't invite him back. So, but you see organizations like actually take stands like that, and but the Blackhawks just seem like they're one to do so.
And it's like, I know sports and athletes and owners and front office personnel, they're just a cross section of life, right? They're human beings.
Yep.
And so you cannot think that the people you root for and cheer for in sports are athletes or actors or musicians or artists, whoever. There's bad people amongst those groups too.
Yep.
And we only hear about the ones that get caught. We don't know about the ones that go unpunished and unfound. So it's like there's always something lurking underneath. And what we don't know, it's probably best that we don't know, because a lot of our idols and stars and people like that, if we knew all of the truths, we'd probably be pretty sad.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's 100%. They always say the most disappointing thing that could happen sometimes is you meet your idols.
Yeah.
And,
right.
That this whole Blackhawks story is kind of a microcosm of that thought. I'll leave this up to you. Do you want to talk any hockey, like actual hockey with this team, or do you want to move straight to Bears?
No. I mean, the only thing I want to talk about the Blackhawks is, as it relates to Jeremy Colleton, the Hawks are off to a horrible start. And now you had the results of the investigation published. Bowman's out. Interim GM is in place. So does that buy more time for Colleton? Even though, by all rights, he should be gone. The bag skate yesterday was a desperate measure of a desperate coach. When anytime a coach enforces the bag skate where you're not like doing any hockey drills, it's just like you're drilling them like conditioning and you're going all Herb Brooks on them.
Again.
That's what's going on. So it's like, and Colleton isn't that guy. And so what he does is he goes and he holds a bag skate. Players can see through that.
Yep.
So it's like he's desperate, but I really think he might have bought himself a little more time here, not because of his own doing, but because of the results of Bowman not being with the organization. And the interim GM probably has a lot more fish to fry right now.
Yeah, no, after all this, they always say too, the worst thing you can do as a coach is not be yourself. And so if he's trying to pull out stops that are not who he is, then that probably doesn't bode well for the locker room either, which already probably is in shambles after all this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a smart guy. I think he's a good person, as far as I know, on the surface. But he's overmatched as a coach. And so maybe he can be a better assistant coach. Maybe down the road he can be a head coach again, but maybe he has to go back to the AHL and be a head coach there and show that he can have success. But it's not working, and it hasn't worked for a while. So it's time for him to move along. But I just think that decision's now going to be tabled for a little while as the smoldering continues and the flames are rising over the Hawks organization.
No, 100%. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Colleton. We're going to move from one coach on the hot seat to another. Bears get killed in Tampa. Bear down in the standings. Bears losing 38-3 at the Bucks. It's funny when you take a look when they lose a game that bad, and I'm like not mad. That's probably a concern. Like at this point, when they get killed by a good team, I am past the let's throw the remote in the LTV phase, which apathy as a sports fan is very dangerous.
Yes.
And that's kind of where I'm at with this staff. Like I keep saying the reason to watch this season is Justin Fields. But if Justin Fields is going to have 1.9 and 2.0 seconds to throw, which was the time I saw this broken down, the amount of time he had to throw on the two plays he fumbled was 1.9.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah.
The 1.9 and 2.0 seconds. So if that's going to be the situation, then what am I really watching here? So it's just, and again, Aaron, thank you for chiming in.
Yeah, appreciate your input on that as a fellow staunch hockey fan as well. So
yes,
we're cut from the same cloth.
Absolutely. So what are we doing here? Why? Obviously, whether we'll get to Justin Fields in a minute. Whatever you think about Justin Fields, if you think he's good, if you think he's bad, if you think whatever the case may be, him being the head coach of the football team hurts his development. It does not help it. There's no debating that at this point. None. Period. We've seen enough. We saw with Trubisky, and maybe Trubisky's bad. I'm not saying he's good or bad or whatever. We saw that he couldn't develop Trubisky. Now we're seeing that Fields is not making any progress, and he's getting killed every time he takes the field. What are we still doing here?
All right.
What is going on?
So we just had a long conversation about the Blackhawks, and we talked a lot about ownership, right?
Yeah.
And what they knew and they didn't know and what they value. Where is the Bears ownership group in this situation? Not even speaking about Ryan Pace, who's hiding underneath his desk or poking his head out the door like he did in that meme or whatever. But if the Bears were serious about winning, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace would be gone right now. Mid-season. You don't have to wait to the end of the season. Your fans and the rest of the league, quite frankly, think you're an embarrassment. You're the butt of jokes. Aaron Rodgers had a good yuck at it, and then Tom Brady chimed in, and then Jim Nantz is chiming in. So all of that's going on, and you're okay with that? And even if you're going to make a change at the end of the season, how about sending a message to your fans that's, enough is enough?
Yeah. What's he doing with that tablet? That's my question. Is he like shopping on Amazon or something with that thing? I think he's looking for new ways to laminate his play sheets, to decorate his room as we always like to throw up.
Yeah. I don't know why he needs a tablet, because what is he looking at? There it is. There's the genius, man. They're on my play calls from sheets from 2018.
Play calls from a year where my offense ranked like 20th in the league.
Yeah.
So and here's my dad. Bears need to run quick slants like every other team in the league. Where are they don't scheme any easy completions for him. There's no screens. There's no quick slants. There's none of that stuff.
It makes you start to question the IQ of this coaching staff. It really does. In terms of their football IQ.
How can you question an IQ when they don't have one? But it's just at this point in time, enough is enough. Whether you think Fields is good or not, because I know one person who's chimed in who sent me some texts this week that tell me that he's given up. He's already kind of pushing the envelope on Fields. So I'll let him identify himself. I know he's listening right now. But whether you think he's good or not, the bottom line is they are doing him no favors, and this is the most important thing this year and next year is that man.
It is
number one. It's the most important thing, and he has to get better. And you, as the coaching staff, their job right now, more so than winning a game, is for him to get better.
I would almost, at this point, Luke, knowing as long as Nagy and company are running the show and are the coaching staff, I would almost at this point want Fields removed and put in Dalton. Just because there's nothing that Fields is going to learn and develop at under Matt Nagy of any significance, I should say. And I think it could only be more harm. There are a lot of tough teams they're going to be facing on this schedule beyond just the Buccaneers and the Packers. The Baltimore Ravens await them. Another meeting with Green Bay in Green Bay. They play the Cardinals, I think, right? It's just like it's yes, there are some cupcakes on their rosters, but those teams are thinking the same thing when they're facing the Bears too. So I really think at this point, put Dalton in there. They won't. I know they won't do this, but me as a Bears fan, I would just prefer get Dalton or get Fields out of the equation until we have a new regime in place, and then go from there.
I 100% agree with you, but my question is why does it shouldn't have to be that way?
I know.
And I actually give them some credit. The Detroit game, the Vegas game, several plays, they brought in a sixth lineman, and they ran different. They put it in motion. They ran different things. They play action, rolled them out. I'm like, okay, this is an offense that is good for him now, and then you could kind of sprinkle some things in as he matures for him to grow. You got a bad offensive line. Let's put more protection in. Let's have our tight end stay in the block, and then we can take our shots when we actually have him protected. They didn't run one play last game with six linemen.
Yeah.
With the fourth string tackle on the right side because the backup to the backup was out with COVID. And who sat down and thought that was a good idea to take that out of the offense when you're playing a great line and the backup to the backup to the backup is starting to tackle? Who sat there and thought that was a good idea? That's the
whole football IQ of that team I'm talking about. It's just like
none. On the other side, there is none. There's no IQ.
A lot of people have mentioned, and I agree with this, there's no pattern, there's no rhythm to the Bears offense. It's like
There's no identity.
The only time there were, like you said, was the game against the Raiders and the game against the Lions because they kind of stuck to what was working. That's what NFL teams do. If something's not working, you change it. And if something is working, you keep doing it until it's not working. They don't do that.
People always used to laugh about the Lovey days with the offense, which struggled a lot. But we get off the bus running, like all that stuff. People used to kind of use it as a punchline.
Yeah.
And it was funny and easy to kind of make fun of. But you know what it was? It was an identity. They knew what they were. Like they knew that they were going to come out and they were going to punch you in the mouth. On the offense now for the Bears, they don't have an identity. And they haven't for the identity they've had with Nagy is the first year they ran trick plays in the red zone.
That's
only considered part of their identity.
The reason why Matt Nagy is here and the reason why Mark Trestman was hired before John Fox was because the Bears wanted to change their offensive identity. They wanted to join the 21st century, right? In terms of, having an offense that, you don't have to rely everything on the defense.
He didn't tell me to run the I formation. That's what he said.
Yeah, right. But the fact of the matter is you can be successful at a conservative offense. You can, and it doesn't mean you can't take your chances as long as you have the player at the quarterback position to do it. And we think that's Justin Fields, but we'll find out. But, they felt they had to get an offensive quote guru who's not a guru. And this is what you get, and then the Bears will always be in this endless cycle, defensive coach, offensive coach, defensive coach, offensive coach. That just seems to be the way they go. It's like in hockey and sometimes in basketball, more so in hockey, authoritative coach, players coach, authoritative coach, players coach. Football coaches seem to be offense, defense, offense, defense. That's what teams do. They never go offense, offense, or defense, defense.
Baseball, it's fiery, calm, fiery, calm, fiery.
Yes. It's like, all right, we had Ozzie. Let's. How about Robin Ventura, folks?
Yeah. And so it's and they're just stuck in this cycle of what you said, and it's you got to keep going up to the chain of command because it all lies at the feet of ownership. It lies at the feet of McCaskey. It lies at the feet of
and you said that, it's got me thinking, and maybe this is another future episode we can do. Maybe there's like the Bears bye week or something. But Chicago owners, are they any good? Right?
Best one's the guy who owns the Sky. I don't even know who that is, but he's the best owner. Whoever that is.
Yeah, but I don't know how long he's owned the Sky. I don't know if he's a new ownership group. I know they have like different partners and things like that, but they're trying to win. They made some moves and they won. They brought in Candace Parker. They got lauded for it, but how long did that owner own the Sky? I don't know that. But Reinsdorf's been around forever and owned both teams forever. The McCaskies
might be the second best owner.
Might be, but I'm not giving Reinsdorf a pass either. How long did we have?
Sad it is. That's how sad it is. If he's the second best owner,
as much as we're excited about the Bulls, and as we're excited that the White Sox are in playoff mode and contention now, and this is their time and their window. The Reinsdorfs were the stewards of some of the worst years of White Sox baseball and some of the worst years of Bulls basketball. They gave us Garpax forever.
You're also a steward of the lockout.
Huh?
Yes. He was also steward of the lockout, 94.
Yep. Right. Don't get me started. Again, season tickets that year, sitting first row in the left field bleachers, before it was like a rugby scrum out there.
Speaking of baseball and lockouts, Curry, that suckers, we'll be talking about that in December.
I think so. I think that's the way it's going to head.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the Bears, this is not going to change until this is what will change. Like you said about the Blackhawks, completely different context, but ownership is not going anywhere here. Yep. And it's not like McCaskey's done anything egregious other than be bad. So he's not going anywhere.
Think about it though. The Bears ownership group with the impending move to Arlington Heights, which I think we both feel that that's going to happen, they could do one of two things here. Stay with it as the ownership group and then reap the benefits of the new stadium and all of that and everything it brings, or the time to sell is now. You got the land rights. Maybe someone else can build and finance the stadium. You got everything going, and now's the time to sell.
I think they're going to sell after it's built.
Maybe so.
But here's what they can do. This is such an easy time to make this transition.
Yep.
With the stadium news and everything. And we've been screaming for them to do this for years to the high heavens. Now is the time. You could take Ted Phillips, you can make him just business, and you can say, we need to transition this role. He's done a great job for us for 30 years.
Yes.
But he's got to focus, he needs to focus on Arlington Heights. And it's
give
a full-time job.
Give him one of those construction trailers and like put it out in at the racetrack, and just that's where he's going to be housed. And then he wears a hard hat. He goes out there and he checks on things, but he doesn't talk to anyone. He's not involved in any football decisions.
So, but it's the perfect time for him for the Bears to do that. Like they can do this without saying you don't know football, so we're going to bring in someone who knows football. They could do that right now with the stadium news. Like, look, he's got to focus on the stadium.
Don't you think though that George McCaskey is in over his head, and that's why he relies on Ted Phillips so much?
Of course,
as bad as that is.
Yeah, of course.
So, like, if he lets Phillips go and be business guy, that means he's got to be the one making the decision of who's the new football guy. And I think he's afraid to make that decision because of all the other bad decisions they've made before.
Could be right.
There's no one in that McCaskey family that knows what the hell they're doing.
There needs to be a Theo type role with the Bears, and a guy head of football operations, and then he's got a GM under him, and that's what needs to happen with this team. There needs to be a football guy hired. Now, like I said, McCaskey's going to have to hire that guy.
Yep.
Whoever it is. So you can ask the fair question of, well, do we trust McCaskey to hire whoever that guy is? But that guy needs to be in place. Yep. And then it'll be up to that guy whatever the heck he wants to do with pace. Nagy's going to be gone. So it all starts at the top. Like I can sit here and yell at you all I want about how I think pace should be gone too, but really it starts up top. Like I kind of feel like that's a fruitless endeavor at this point because it's like, okay, all right, he gets fired, Nagy gets fired. Well, who's picking the next two people? Ted Phillips and
right.
It's the same thing. So
we're in that endless cycle, right?
Yeah. And unless
it never changes, and I know you can't fire the owners, but then the owners got to show that they care about winning or they care about their organizations being good citizens.
The saddest thing about the Bears, I don't know if this is sad or if this is like something to be at least this, I think he does care. I just think he doesn't know what he's doing. Like you said.
Yes.
I think McCaskey when McCaskey talks, and he comes off to me as someone who actually really does care about the Bears. And, it's been in the family and all that. And it's his thing. And, that he grew up in Bears football. I think he cares. I really do. But he's never the McCaskies don't have any other businesses. Their business is the Bears. So it's not like he's ran a successful business anywhere.
Right.
So it's not like he would know, well, I should put this person in X position because he can help me in X position more than Y position. He doesn't know that. Like he's okay. Ted's been here. Ted's my guy. We'll roll with Ted. That's kind of the mindset. It's very mom and pop grocery store down the street. That's the problem. So
it's a billions-dollar franchise. It's only going to have more value once that stadium starts. Construction on that stadium. And the run, like you're right, like a mom and pop organization that doesn't know, how to bring in the right people for the right jobs, because all it takes is one. Get the top guy right, and they'll get everything else right.
Yeah.
And they cannot get the top guy right.
Yep. No, 100%. I think we've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but Field of Dreams was Fields of Nightmares in Tampa. 5 turnovers. We haven't had the show in a couple of weeks. We both kind of had busy schedules, so we haven't really talked a lot about Fields' quarterback yet.
Yeah.
Where are you at with him? Like, what do you think? What do you think you've seen? Does it matter what you've seen? Like, just quick. I thought we'd kind of give quick thoughts here on Justin and
So real quick, I've seen flashes of what he can be, but I've seen more than enough of him looking overwhelmed, indecisive, not knowing what to do, unprepared. And that's, I don't know, some of that's on him. A lot of that's on him. A lot of that's on the coaching staff. So I still think there's something there. There's no way. What are the Bears, 3-4?
Yeah.
Right. 7 games in, and he's only started 5 of those.
So he had started 5. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah. So we can't make any grand conclusions from 5 games. But what I did say, and I meant it, is I think he should be pulled as the starter, put Dalton in, allow Fields to like kind of take a back seat and kind of watch the game, watch Dalton handle it, understand it from the side, and just to get away from being in harm's way because of the Matt Nagy, Bill Lazor play calling issues and the offensive line, all that, so it sounds like I'm saying let Andy Dalton get his butt beat in, which kind of sounds that way, but I don't think he's ready. I listen. Boomer Esiason has a weekly hit with Parkins and Spiegel every Monday, and he's been saying it consistently. He's not ready. Be careful what you wish for. He's not ready, and he's looked every bit of that. Now the Bucs can make you look like that, but the Packers did too, and they're not a great defense. And Cleveland destroyed the Bears. So it's been more bad than good. And I think he can develop some bad habits if you let it continue. I think he needs to come out, let Dalton run it for a while. And Boomer's even said this. Then when the Bears are officially eliminated from playoff contention, then maybe put him in. But I still, with an asterisk, that's assuming Nagy's not around anymore, But yeah. I doubt that's going to be the case. So too early to make a determination on him. But I think we need to pump the brakes, pause, and pull him out for now, and then just we can revisit that down the road this season, whether or not you want to put him back in.
I agree with what you said. Again, I have the caveat with that is it shouldn't have to be that way because
I agree.
Do I think he's ready to play with what they want him to do? No. Do I think where he's at right now, there can be a game plan and an offense where you can really maximize what he's able to do at this point in time that makes you more dynamic than Andy Dalton does? Yes. And we're just not good enough as a staff to scheme that up, apparently.
If they could do that, Luke, they would have done it with Trubisky, and they did.
Yeah.
And now it feels like we're doing the same thing. It feels like a broken record.
And I heard the Boomer Esiason hit. I almost said Boomer Berman. The Boomer Esiason hit. I heard the Boomer Esiason hit that you're talking about, and I believe the thing that he says is he can't read a defense yet and can't pick up a blitz yet.
Yeah.
And, okay, fair. What did we say about Mitch Trubisky? Can't read a defense, pick up a blitz. Who is the common denominator of Mitch Trubisky and Justin Fields? It's Matt Nagy.
Right, yes.
So that's why I have a hard time really evaluating Justin Fields at all.
Yeah.
Because look at the common denominator here. It is the staff. So has Fields been bad? Of course. He's been terrible. He turned the ball over 5 times last game. Like that's bad. But do I think I have trouble making any sort of indictment on him.
You were starting to sound like Ted Phillips there. Has Field been bad? Yes. Have we won enough games? No.
I saw you smirking. I'm like, what's he smirking about over there? But so of course he's been bad, but I have a hard time making any sort of indictment on him. The one thing I will say that I loved, And, this is kind of cliche type stuff. But hearing the three guys in the football after show, were beaming about this, was how fast Fields got to the podium after the game. He was in his uniform. His pads, he went right to the press room with his pads and everything, and he took full ownership of the game. And, Kreutz and Brown and Briggs were on the after show, and they were all like, as bad as he played, if I'm in that locker room, I see that, and I think to myself, all right, we got a guy that leads our football team that is willing to take the heat for all of us.
That's a great sign.
Yeah, so that tells me that, while he might look finicky on field, he's not finicky up here. Right. That's what that tells me. And I never thought that about Mitch. I think that's the difference. But and that's what gives me hope for the future. But Dan Marino would have busted with Nagy. That's where I'm at right now. Marino, Peyton Manning, Mahomes, Montana, all these guys would have busted if Nagy was tasked with developing them. That's where I'm at this point. That's why I need to get out of here right now. So, before we move to the Bulls, real quick, who we got? 49ers this week coming to town. They got their own list of problems. They got their own list of problems going on over there.
I think the Niners will win it. I think Jimmy G has himself a game. He looked awful in that Sunday night game in that torrential downpour. I think Jimmy G has himself a nice homecoming. And so I think the Niners will win. It won't be a big score. Maybe they'll win in typical Bears offensive fashion. It'll probably be a 20-17 game. I'm
thinking less than that.
Could be
13-6. So, but no, I think usually
Nagy calling plays from his car because he's in the COVID protocol.
Yeah, usually Nagy's teams have bounced back from embarrassments like that. I wonder how many bullets are left in that round right there.
See, that's the thing though. He's out on COVID protocol. Aside from being on Zoom, he's not in the building.
Yeah, well, he is. We know he's vaccinated, so if he has 2 negative tests in a row before Sunday, I think he's back. So, if he's asymptomatic, I question the fact whether he's asymptomatic or not. I don't know if you heard his post-game presser, but he sounded sick.
He did. He's not asymptomatic. Yeah, he's not asymptomatic, I don't think. So
we'll see what happens there.
Well, that plus half the team, not half the team, but a bunch of the players are dropping and coaches are dropping around them going to protocol.
Yeah. No, so it's a messy situation. While the Niners are messy right now as well, I do think Kyle Shanahan's a little overrated. I think he's infinitely better than Nagy. Mm-hmm. So I agree with you. I initially thought, the Bears seem like they usually win games like this, but I think, like I said, I think that's running out. The Niners, they don't have George Kittle, but they're getting healthier. They got Eli Mitchell is back. He's looked great. I think Bosa's on their defense now, so they're getting healthier. So I like San Francisco for this.
I would like to see, this isn't about the picks, but when Montgomery comes back, in a couple of weeks or something like that, and then you got Khalil Herbert going and Williams, hopefully he'll be back soon. You have those 3 running backs. That wouldn't be a bad time to then go back to Mr. Fields, right? That'll help Andy Dalton for sure, but to have those running backs and then you can change the identity, that would be perfect. So that's one thing I am excited about the Bears is the running game. It's not the defense. It's the running game. It seems to be like a Bear tradition, though. They always have good backs. And, I like the trio of backs that they have right now.
And Herbert has looked great. He looked great against Tampa. He ran against Tampa. Nobody runs against Tampa.
Right.
Tampa. The one thing I will say about Khalil Herbert is because myself included, we've all been throwing bouquets of roses at the guy's feet the last 3 weeks. He's looked great. He's going to get Justin Fields killed in pass protection.
Oh, right.
For as good a game as he had running the ball, he whiffed on so many blocks in that game.
Yeah.
So he's got something to work on there. And, I remember Matt Forte wasn't a great pass blocker until like his third year. And then he became one of the better pass blockers in the NFL. So, I mean, he can obviously get better at it. But that's just something to watch for, especially when we're talking about Fields and keeping it protected. Like, he should be on the field on third down because it needs to be Damian Williams or someone else. Like, because he's going to get Fields going to die. Or
Right.
Dalton, whoever's under center might die if Herbert's got to pick up a blitz. So let's get to some good news. I know we've been on for a while, but at this point we got no airwaves regulating us, and we got to talk about some good stuff on this show.
Yes, we do.
The Chicago Bulls 4-0, first time since 96-97. You know what happened that year, Eric?
72, baby.
Yeah, you know what those stats say. Well, we Bulls going to win 73 games this year. We're going to tie the Warriors record.
Oh my God!
I mean, I gush about the Bulls all the time, but you've been gushing about the Bulls. So
I mean, first of all, I'm watching them, so that's like they've been tough to watch over the years. Like even last year's version. I love Zach LaVine. I love Kobe White. Not a great marketing fan, but I love some of the players on last year's team. But you can tell they didn't know how to win, right? They'd get up and then they'd just like fall apart, or they'd have a big deficit and fight back, but then they run out of gas. You saw that a lot last year. Now it's only 4 games in, but you talk about identity of a team. The identity of this team is it's fast pace. It's harassing defense. It's getting buckets in transition, at all costs. So sometimes to the detriment of the half court game. And that's something they're going to have to work on, but I don't care about that. This team loves to fly. They love to pressure. They can spread the ball around. They're only going to get better when Kobe White comes back because they need that offensive element in the second unit. I've been impressed by how Billy has been using the bench in different spurts, like using Io. He just seems to be finding the right time to put the right player in for the right matchup. And he's learning about his bench because it's a completely different bench than he had last year. And so he's using the time to do that. And oh, by the way, they're winning, and they're competitive. And Zach LaVine doesn't have to score 40 points a game for the Bulls to win. I think that's the biggest development here. DeRozan has been as advertised. Vooch has been a little slow to get off the blocks. Everything looks short coming out of his hands right now, so he's scuffling a little bit. I'm hoping, maybe there's just some ailment or something, but I'd really like to see him kind of step it up. But Lonzo Ball and Alex Caruso, I mean, they're worth every penny right now.
Yeah. No, they've been awesome. And, it's crazy to think that, I don't know if I think you've heard this stat, but since our tourists took over in the middle of the pandemic, so from then until now, there are only 2 guys left on the roster from when our tourists took over. And that's LaVine and Kobe. Kobe's not even playing.
Yeah.
Right now. So it's really one guy right now. This team is one guy. He's completely flipped the roster in 2 years.
But you can do that in the NBA.
Yeah.
If there's any league that allows for it, this is the league.
And this roster, it's clear to me, and again, it's been 4 games and they've played bad teams. We'll get to that in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But this roster fits. They fit well. There's cohesion. There's, they all have the right attitude and mentality. And it's funny because all you heard nationally, people talk about with the Bulls, they're not going to be able to guard anyone. They're not going to be able to play. Lonzo Ball didn't play defense. Caruso's small. DeRozan's ever been a great defensive player. What they didn't realize was Billy Donovan, last year, the Bulls were 12th in defensive rating, which is crazy to think about because everyone plays defense. And in the NBA, if it's not that hard, I know people kind of laugh about the NBA sometimes because people don't play defense. But if you are willing to put the effort in on defense and you're athletic, you will be a good NBA defense. And the Bulls are both things.
Right.
They have the minds. They've bought into a defensive first mentality that Billy Donovan and the coaching staff has ingrained into them. And they're athletic enough to pull it off and be good at it. Like, there's athletes at Carson. The only guy who's like subpar athletically that they play on a normal basis is Vooch.
Yep.
Everybody else is above par from an athletic standpoint. I mean, like Lonzo, Levine, DeRozan, especially Levine, he's an athletic freak. Like, these guys are one of the most athletic teams in the league. So, it's just cool to see them, because we love the offseason here because we just saw them be bold for the first time in a long time. It was not like all bouquets of roses thrown nationally toward the Bulls. There were a lot of people that questioned the moves they made in the offseason, especially the DeRozan move. So how's the fit going to be next to Levine? They both need the ball. Well, the fits look pretty good for the first 4 games.
No, and I think DeRozan's veteran presence is really helping Levine, right?
He's the only one who didn't melt down last night.
Yeah.
I was ready to have a heart attack watching that game. I was going nuts. I'm like, we can't blow this to Toronto. But DeRozan just calm as calm can be, sunk the shots when he needed to. And I know it's cliched, but they don't win that game last year. There's no shot.
Right. But those are the things that Levine is a veteran, but he's still a younger veteran, right? And those are the things that he can see from DeRozan to say, oh, okay, there's a different way of doing this, and they're saying the right things. Like, to a man, they all felt that they got away with one yesterday. Yeah. So I just think, it's a great mix right now. And yes, it's 4 games, and like you said, tougher schedules coming up here in November. But these were games the Bulls clearly would have lost at least half of these.
Yeah, they wouldn't have won opening night, and they wouldn't have won yesterday. They'd be 2-2.
Yeah.
And before we move to the schedule, I don't know if you heard Levine at the end of the game yesterday. My favorite part of yesterday was he was pissed.
Yeah.
They interviewed him immediately after the game, and Stacey and Amin are like, "Oh, it's great you guys got the win. You held them off in the end," and he was basically like, "Sure, I'll take the win, but they can't get that close." Like, we were
said that. And then DeRozan to reporters, or in like the post-game press conference, the Zoom or whatever they do, kind of saying something similar. It's like, how does it feel to be 4-0? And he goes, doesn't mean a thing. We got stuff to work on. It's like, and it was evident in this game. So his level head, Levine already knowing that that's not how this team needs to be. When the players have a higher expectation of themselves, that's when it works.
Yeah. No, it's been fun. It's been a long time. I'm the way you, and this, the way you are with the Hawks, I am with the Bulls. Like, I consider myself like fully post Jordan, because I don't really remember. Like, the first year I fully remember sitting down and watching almost every Bulls game was Jay Williams' rookie year. Like, that's the first one. So I sat through a lot of lean years as Bulls fan before I saw Derek come to town and kind of put us on the map for the first time. But so I am over the moon about this team. I'm pumped about them, and they've been a lot of fun. But you got to ask the question, with the schedule they've played so far, are they this good, or is this the result of the schedule they have? I think we're both going to say it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But what do you?
The answer is yes. Yeah.
I think it's going to be interesting to see what they're made of against these teams coming up, and we'll talk about that schedule in a second. But the trends that they're showing on the court and off the court, like you said, they're acting like a contender, and they're carrying themselves like a contender, and that leads me to believe that they're not going to contend for a finals this year. Don't get me wrong, but this is a playoff team. This is a playoff caliber team that's capable of winning a series. If you get the breaks and you get some injuries like you had in the playoffs last year, maybe you can win 2 and get yourself to the East Finals, get a little lucky. But they're a team that's in that mold, and I think that's where they are. I feel better about that than I did a week ago.
Yeah, so you have to beat the teams that you should beat, right? That's a mark of a contender. And you can do that, then you're in good shape. Then it's hold water, hold serve with the teams that are above you as best as you can. You know, you're not going to win them all. And there's going to be some games you're going to get blown out in and you're going to look bad in. But those should be mitigated by the games that you should win. You're winning those. And then the teams in the middle, you know, you're doing more than enough against those teams. And then you pick off a win here and there against some of the top teams, you know. So they are a contender for sure. And yes, the schedule's helped, and it's only 4 games in. But something about the team having an identity this early, especially defensively, I think that can carry you through many, many games. And I think they're only going to get better. Like Patrick Williams still has to figure out his role, especially with all the new additions. And so I don't think we're seeing the full potential of him. And again,
I sure hope not.
I think with Kobe coming back when he's healthy, back to his like original come off the bench instant offense type of role, I think that's what he's best suited for. And I think he could really help this lineup that much as well.
Brian Paradis brings up an interesting point. Brian, welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. Brian, probably the biggest Bulls fan I know, or one of them. Brian, I know, longtime Bulls season ticket holder here, chiming in. I thought this same thing as we leave his comment up on the screen. I was actually going to say that when you mentioned P. Will. I wonder if he has been rushed back from that shoulder injury. They really want him back out there opening night. I
would hope not, though. I mean, he's a key roster member, especially for the future.
He was timid last year, but he's been even more timid this year. Like it's been pretty apparent. I have a buddy who jokes in a group text and calls him the Invisible Man. So it's been like, he disappears a lot, and I am a little concerned about that shoulder and if that's factoring into some of this. And I do think if it was a problem, they would be smart enough and they would hold him back.
I'm giving the Bulls. Well, you should never give the Bulls medical staff the benefit of the doubt, but different era, different head coach. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that it's not something that is causing him ongoing issues here. He may have to play through like a little pain, but like not to where it's it's a chronic injury and he's being debilitated by it. So that's I choose to believe that. But you talk about him being timid. That's a problem because that was supposed to be the thing that changed. Now, maybe I brought this up when he got injured and he missed all that training camp time. That's the time that they're really looking to like instill Patrick Williams 2.0, what you need to be. And I think he missed a lot of that time because of that injury. And now he comes back, regular season starter. You're just doing practices between games. I just think it's going to take longer for him to reach his development, but he has to be more aggressive. I mean, we already went through the Lauri Markkanen years. We don't need another ghost out there.
Yeah, I would think right now, basically, their backup power forward's been Javonte Green, who's actually played really well, but he's not a power forward.
Right.
So they already need a big as it is. When we're going to have conversations throughout the year about the Bulls, and once we get into like roster construction and stuff, I think that's their biggest need right now is they need another dude with some size. But I hopefully what you said about DeRozan before with Levine also rubs off on Williams throughout the course of the year.
Yeah.
And this slow start for him is a result of him missing most of camp and things of that nature. And then we really start to see him play well versus the better teams on the schedule, which are coming up here over the next 15 games. So this is where it gets tough for the Bulls. And when the schedule came out, if you're a Bulls fan, you looked at it, you saw this, you said, oh my gosh, it's going to be hard. Starting Thursday versus the Knicks, the next 15 games are against teams that were in the playoffs last year or at least the play-in. But I think all of them I think with the exception of Indiana, I think they all were in actual playoff series.
Well, to quote a famous Bulls coach of the past, they have more than enough to win, at least against the Knicks, I feel.
Yeah. The Knicks, that's going to be fun Thursday. It's Joakim Noah night. He's being honored. They're bringing back a bunch of guys. Tibbs, Taj, and Rose, all with the Knicks right now. That's going to be fun. I'm going. I'm pumped for it.
Are you going to that game?
Yeah, my a buddy asked me to go a couple days ago, so I'm excited to go check that one out. So hopefully I make it 5-0 for them. But just before our next show, let's say we have our next show Monday night again or next week. Knicks, Jazz, and then at the Celtics coming up, and then it only gets harder from there. You got a couple with Philly, you got Brooklyn, you got West where you got the Warriors, Clippers, and Lakers all in a row. It's gonna be a brutal stretch. If they could come out of this stretch of 15 games, going 7-8 or 8-7, if they come out of there like that, then I'm gonna tell you I think we got a team. Because that's if you said if you can hang with those teams, you're not gonna win them all. No. Especially a new team like the Bulls, not expecting them to win it all. But if you could compete in those games and come out of there looking like you fought tooth and nail, you maybe had a blowout or two in there, but for the most part you play hard and you won a handful of them. I think that's a really good sign, and I hope that's what we're going to see for this team.
Yeah, no, I agree. If they could do that, because then that only gives them the confidence to know that they can compete at a high level. And Marty says, yeah, you got to beat the good teams. You're not going to beat them all, though, like you said, but you need to beat some of them. You can't, remember, they don't have the circus trip anymore because there's no circus.
Thank goodness.
Right. But the Bulls and even the Blackhawks, whenever those teams left for the circus trip, it was bad news. The Bulls on the West Coast, forget about it. That shouldn't happen anymore. They should be expected to be competitive in these games and win and knock off some of these teams. Whether you want to call it an upset or not, they fancy themselves as a contender. And if you want to fancy yourself as a contender, you have to show that you can play with the big boys. So they're going to have to win some of those games. And if they go 7-8, 8-7, whatever it is, that would be a good mark. Yeah, I saw Brian's comment there. So that's concerning but the question is it just the natural soreness from the injury that's going to take time for him to be able to play through and heal? Or is there risk of further injuring his shoulder? That's two different things.
Yeah. I have faith that it's probably a natural healing process here.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is the old medical staff. This is a new staff.
Right.
Just don't prescribe him a spinal tap. Just don't do that, please.
Yeah. Dang is on line one.
So and as far as being the good teams, you got the Knicks coming in. Knicks blew out Philly tonight. Philly's a mess right now. They got the whole Ben Simmons drama going on there. If we were a national sports show, we'd talk about that a lot. But all you need to know is that Philly's chemistry is a complete mess right now. While they're a really good team, they're in a little bit of a disarray. So it'll be a good test. Knicks on Thursday. Knicks were in the playoffs last year. They had a good series versus Atlanta before they fell. So it'll be a good test for them for sure. Last thing to mention. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to Brian's question there. Where do we think the first loss is going to come from?
I think it's going to be exactly what Brian said. I think Utah
Jazz
is going to be the Jazz are really freaking good. I know, it's a small market. Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert are as good of an inside-outside combo as you're going to find in the NBA. Gobert's not a super great offensive player, but there isn't a better rim protector in the league than him. Bogdanovich can just stroke it. Conley's a great point guard. They're a really good team. I'm surprised they went out as early as they did last year.
As a side note, is Rudy Gobert always going to be the grandfather of the COVID shutdown of America?
In my mind, yes.
It's it's his fault.
He was the first guy. Him and Tom Hanks were two first celebrities to get COVID.
Yep.
So it's either him or it's Tom Hanks. It's one of the two guys. But No, I think it's coming versus the Jazz on Saturday.
Yeah, that feels about right.
Yeah. I have a good feeling about Thursday. I think, but Tibbs is going to have something in store for them. So it'll be interesting to see how that game goes. It's going to be a great one. But the Jazz one sounds a little more.
That place is going to be electric, especially with Noah's. What do you want to call it? What are they doing? They're honoring him, or
yeah, he officially retired. So it's Joakim Noah night.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what it's going to entail, but I read that Brad Miller is going to be there, who is like his mentor.
You know what they should do?
Luol Deng's supposed to be there.
Are they going to do it at halftime?
I think so.
So one of the gifts they should give him should be like a 1 week stay in Cleveland. just to tease him.
That'd be great. It would be cool if they did it at some point where the Knicks are out there, so like Tibbs and Rose and Taj can be involved in that somehow, because obviously they had such a big impact on each other's careers. So I would imagine it'll be done in some way where the Knicks can be involved. It definitely wasn't an accident that they picked the Knicks to do this. So
maybe they'll do it before the game.
Yeah, it'll definitely be something.
Yeah.
But before we sign off here, really quick, we got to give our thoughts on this. Ozzie Guillen, today news came out that he interviewed last week for the San Diego Padres managerial opening. It's not like either of us have like knowledge of the Padres, the way they do business. But do you think this is like actually a thing, or do you think this is like a courtesy thing? Like, what do we think about this bit of news that came out today?
You don't know what to make of it, because baseball teams and owners and GMs, at least lately, tend to make impulsive hires. So if they really liked Ozzie, and if he interviewed last week, I think he would have been named the manager already. Whether or not it was just like a courtesy interview, I don't think that's the case, because I think the Padres are exploring all options because they are in their contention window and they were embarrassed by falling out of the race. So I think they're exploring all options and alternatives, and I think them interviewing Ozzie is a serious gesture. I just don't know who his competition is and what the Padres front office is looking for in their manager. Having said that, they know what Ozzie's about, right? So did they interview him to find out what he's learned since he's last been behind the bench? What can Ozzie say in an interview that would sway the modern GM front office to say, you know what, it's time to give him another shot? Because I don't know. I don't know what he could say. I don't know what he's learned. When you listen to him on post-game, Sox post-game live, pre-game live, it's a lot of old school stuff. But then again, Tony La Russa is still managing. So who's to say Ozzie can't do it? I think Ozzie's one of those managers who has a short shelf life. He's not like the John Tortorella of NHL, but he's like, you'll get a good run from him, but then he'll wear out his welcome. And I think he'd eventually do that again. But if that window for the Padres is like the next, 4 or 5 years, whatever, I think Ozzie would be a great choice.
Yeah, I read that all the guys they've interviewed so far are former managers. They've interviewed Brad Ausmus, Mike Schilt, who just managed last year, and Luis Rojas, who I believe managed the Mets. I might be wrong.
Yep.
But so obviously they're looking for someone with MLB experience as a manager. Jace Tingler was their manager before this, and he didn't have any experience before he was hired. So I think that's probably what they're kind of angling toward. And look, the Padres last year had a really too cool for school attitude. They just kind of felt like they had this big off season, and you kind of got the sense that they thought they were just going to walk to a playoff spot, and they had everything coming for them, and they kind of felt like it seems.
And they had those chemistry issues, that were going on too. I think that's why you look at a manager like Ozzie, who would deflect a lot of it. If there's one thing we know about Ozzie, he loves being the center of attention, and he wouldn't allow for that stuff to be like seeping across. So he would be the one to diffuse it, and he would be the one to bring the attention to me. Keep it off the players. Bring it on me. In the meantime, I manage the team behind the scenes, and they do what I tell them to do. So I really think it's a good idea for the Padres to do it. I'd love to see them follow through with it.
Yeah, he's the he'll take the heat off the players, but then he'll also grab Machado with the T, sit them down day one, and be like, "You two got to figure out how to get along." Like,
right.
There's a rift between those two guys right now, and those are the two franchise players on the team. So that's that's kind of the crux of why they were as bad as they were last year. So not for lack of talent there. So I think that Ozzie, I agree. I actually think he's a really good fit for that team.
Can you see him managing in the NL West? That's the division, man.
Yeah. So that would be something. And of course, everyone I know right here, I would miss him on post. He's hilarious. Yes. But I would be happy for Ozzie. Like I think this is long overdue. I think what he said in Miami was obviously terrible, but he's kind of done what he's needed to do and kind of quote unquote served his time from that at this point.
Yep.
And he was a great manager for most of the time he was with the Sox. And like you said, he has an expiration date. Like all coaches have an expiration date. He had his happened with the Sox. And I just think I've always felt that he has like one more managerial stop left in him in this game where he'll do something good.
Yeah.
And I will say, though, if he comes out, I'm going to call that the MLB scripted their season if it's Padres Sox World Series next year.
That would be awesome. La Russa against Ozzie. Yeah. White Sox against the Padres. Oh, my God.
But, yeah, so that's definitely news to watch in the coming days here. Usually the MLB kind of poo-poos you announcing like hirings during the World Series.
When are the GM meetings? Are they like 2 weeks after the World Series, something like that?
I think so. It's going to be interesting because there's I think the CBA expires in January.
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting if are teams going to rush to sign guys, or are they going to wait it out during the winter meetings and whatnot? So
there might be trades,
Yeah. So hopefully grown men can sit down and grown adults can sit down and figure out how to make a compromise, which is always funny to me during, you learn how to compromise in kindergarten, and apparently everyone forgets that skill when it comes time to negotiate labor. So,
especially in baseball. Yep.
Yeah. So, anyways, but this is a great show, Eric. 1 hour and 42 minutes going strong still. We had
a crisp 1 hour and 42 minutes.
And we have yet to we never had our post-mortem White Sox show.
You know what? I was thinking about that. I think we should do that because Rick Hahn has not spoken since the season ended. And so it kind of feels like he's not going to speak until the GM meetings, at which case we'll hear his comments. So I think that might be the time for us to kind of revisit White Sox 2021 and kind of do our postmortem, because I really am anxious to hear what he has to say, what he thinks they need to improve, and that'll give us more context in terms of our discussion. But I know we still have thoughts on it, and they're not going away, but I think getting Hahn's comments on 2021 and what he's looking to do for next year, I think will help extend our conversation.
Before we go with that, are you like me, and have you been? I'm snapping out of this now. I would say the last couple of days I've started to snap out of this. But were you like me, and were you unable to watch playoff baseball the last week and a half because you were disappointed about the Sox loss? I haven't been able to turn it on.
I forget. I watched the Dodgers Giants. I watched the last half of the elimination game, or the last two games of that series. I didn't watch any of the Red Sox Astros. I did not watch any Braves Brewers. So all I caught was Dodgers and Giants, and I enjoyed what I watched. But as far as a motivation to turn it on, no, it hasn't been there. I'm probably not going to watch any of the World Series. Game one's on right now, right?
Yeah, Braves up 5-1 right now.
Good for the Braves. So, but I have no interest in watching the Astros, and the Braves have always have been just a bland team. Even when they were like winning divisions year after year, it's like, it's like they didn't excite me, and they still don't.
It does make me feel better about the White Sox, given the fact that the Astros were able to dismantle the Red Sox without Lance McCullers, and were able to do it in the way they did. It makes me feel like, okay, the White Sox just lost to maybe the best team in the sport. So that makes me feel a little better about them. But
does it though? I mean, doesn't it underscore how far away the White Sox are?
But I don't think I don't know how far away they actually are. I think that's a saying that sometimes it's kind of easy to I'm not saying you're doing this, but I feel like sometimes it's kind of easy to throw out there after you lose to a team in a series. I mean, I think, they need a couple of bats and they need to hone in on some details. I think that's what they need to do. I think they're as talented as almost any team out there. That hasn't really changed. I think there's a couple of holes they need to plug, and they need to focus on some little things. And I think there needs to be, I love the fun they have, but I think there needs to be a little bit of a mindset change with them next year that is more about, let's get down to business. Let's not make the little mistakes, and let's hone in on those things. And we'll get into what those are when we really dive into this team.
Right.
I think
start at number one, hit a cutoff man. Yeah.
Job number 2, learn how to make sure they don't steal bases on you like it's their job.
Yeah. So you're expecting a veteran. Well, here we go. We're expecting a veteran like Grandal to change his colors overnight. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And he's going to be catching the majority of the time.
Well, the other interesting thing, and again, we said we're not going to talk about this, and here we are. But the other interesting thing is he had surgery 2 days after the playoffs again.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, and maybe I'll send you the link, or I'll tag you in the Twitter post. But he had another knee surgery 2 days after the playoffs. So, I mean, I cut him he was terrible with blocking. Don't get me wrong, but I cut him a little bit of slack. If he played through a serious knee injury all year and still had the offensive season he had, it's pretty impressive. But maybe that has something to do with the defense too. So but regardless, I'm pissed, I'm bummed, but it's still we're still in a window here where you let one slip away this year, but you should be good for a while. And just hoping that Jerry opens a checkbook, man. That's what needs to happen. Open a checkbook for another hitter or two, and we got shot. So
we may need a couple pitchers. And we'll get into that. We keep saying that. I'm already feeling it, but this team really needs a couple pitchers, and they need an ace. They do not have an ace. Lucas Giolito is not an ace. Lance Lynn is not an ace. Dylan Cease is not going to be an ace. They do not have an ace. They do not have a Lance McCullers.
All I'll say is I don't fault you for that opinion. I understand it. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with you 100% on Gio, but it would be nice if they signed another ace.
I'm saying he regressed this year. He regressed.
Again, we will save this.
All right.
But this was fun. We hadn't been on in a while, so we'll try to get something up here for next week as well.
Thanks for piloting the ship here too. And then maybe we need to figure out the best day and time. We got some good interaction tonight, which was good. So maybe Tuesday night is our night. I'll have to see what my schedule is, your schedule is. So maybe Monday night isn't a good night because we're always bumping up against Monday Night Football and whatever else that might be.
I know sometimes there's, especially when basketball starts, you're going to have those Tuesday night NAC conference games.
Yeah.
So we'll have to navigate that. But thanks for tuning in, everyone. This has been another edition of PrimeTime Sports with Luke and Eric here on Restream